I'll use the microphone. Yeah, I like the bench to be a little. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so. Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I'm Robert Buxton. It's great to be back. We probably saw each other, if you were at West, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah, that was not that long ago. I love being here so often. The only challenge is, as in the words of one of my teachers, that a piece of music, you start to play it well when you're sick of it, when you get sick of it. So, and I hope that doesn't apply for you. In other words, there will be some things today that you've heard, but I have some things that I haven't played for you yet. So, now first, I'd like to improvise. And I was in the car listening to, do you know the composer Olivier Messiaen? It's a wonderful French composer. He was a very, 20th century, there's a lot of dissonance there, but he's also very French sounding. You know, he was very influenced by bird calls and had this very unusual, also like stained glass windows. He was very Catholic too, devout Catholic. He would do these chords that sound like stained glass, like, these. And then the bird calls. So, and then some, I don't know. That's kind of a very, very, very big generalization. But I was thinking I would take some silly tune like Happy Birthday or something that you'd rather.
Happy birthday.
Oh, it's your birthday. Okay. So then, that Happy Birthday in the style of Messiaen. Does that work? And so it's going to be, and I promise it's an improvisation because I just thought of it, in the car. I thought of this idea. Okay, I was listening to Messiaen. I thought, I wonder what it would be like to play, Happy Birthday in the style of that composer. So here it is. Obviously, even though I'm making fun of the composer, he's a really wonderful composer worth really listening to. Now I'm going to play some of these you've heard probably last time. I have some new things that are a little fresh for me, but I feel I owe it to you because we meet so often. But even with the old pieces, I don't try, they come out differently every time. My teacher said not only you get sick of it when it starts to improve, but also the way you play something, it depends on everything from the weather to even what kind of food you had for breakfast. Everything influences. You can't step in the same river twice. So I'm going to play now. This is Ave Maria by Schubert, arranged by Liszt because I don't sing. So. My singer friends tell me everybody can sing, and I say, really? I open my mouth and sing, and they say, well, I guess not everybody can sing. So this is a piece, it's interesting, the text was not what you think it is. Like, you've probably heard it sung in Latin, to the Hail Mary prayer. That's what most people sing it with. From Pavarotti to Perry Como, they sing it in Latin. But that's not the text Schubert used when he wrote the piece. He used another prayer to Mary, an excerpt of Sir Walter Scott's poem, The Lady of the Lake, which is a Arthurian, is it? Legend, and of course in German translation. And Ave Maria is one of his lead is a song for voice and piano. And Schubert wrote so many of them that's even in his last few years, he would write multiple lieder in a single day. He was very ill in his last years. This is when he wrote this. And he died at 31, which is unimaginable. Even Mozart died at 35. But it's, and it's also that medicine was not what it is today. It's just a lot of these composers, a lot of people just did not live very long back then. So if some people ask me, would you want to go back in time because they were such great composers? You know what, no thank you. I mean, modern things are, medicine and air conditioning, thank you very much, I'll stay here. So, but that's it. And so what Liszt did was Liszt kind of came across his music after his death, because Schubert in his lifetime was unknown, virtually unknown, pretty much unknown, and he died penniless and just an anonymous Viennese person, pretty much. I mean, he had some circle of friends that knew and admired him, but that's it. And Liszt was so moved by the music that he started doing these arrangements, and arranged many of Schubert's Lieder, and I'm going to try to learn some more. They're very tricky, these arrangements, but Liszt performed them at his early recitals in the 1840s and popularized Schubert. So in a way, we can be grateful to Liszt for popularizing Franz Schubert. And I'll point out that this arrangement starts very much like the original Ave Maria that you've heard. But in following verses, it's different. Liszt adds things like this. Like that right hand, those flourishes, that is not Schubert. Liszt added that in. Why did he do that? Was he just being a showman? Because that's part of who Liszt was, yes, but he was more than that. And I think that Liszt is very shrewd and brilliant, because he understands that in a lied or a song, you have pretty much the same music that repeats with different words. But if I were to just do that on the piano without singing, it might not have so much variety. And so to create variety and contrast, Liszt changes things in verses 2, 3, etc. He adds things to it. And that's what it is. I don't think it's just Liszt being a show-off. I've heard that comment. I used to believe that. I used to think Liszt was just, he was a superficial showman. He could be, but there's so much more to him than that, that I wouldn't say that anymore about him. So here is Schubert, Liszt, Ave Maria. I don't want this to catch too much of the piano. Thank you. So now I'm going to play an original piece by Liszt. This I think I played for the first time for you all at West a few weeks ago. And this is Liszt's Consolation number 3. It's a pretty famous piece of Liszt's. And what stands out about it is it's uncharacteristically introverted for the most part, because Liszt was probably such an extrovert. And it's such a subtle piece. And there's a lot of sadness to it. I think because he wrote it right after Chopin died in 1849. They were friends. Well, at least Liszt considered Chopin to be his friend. I don't think Chopin considered Liszt to be his friend. Chopin was a prickly person. Read his letters sometime, trust me. It goes, I love his music, obviously, but I don't know, he looked down at Liszt a lot. But again, Liszt, I don't think Liszt cared about it. And what Liszt is doing here, I believe, is writing in Chopin's style, at least in the beginning. You know, just like the Ave Maria, by the end, Liszt is always gonna, come about, even if it's an arrangement or something in Chopin's style. But listen to a little bit of the beginning. And if I were to tell you this was a Chopin nocturne, I don't think you'd be surprised. Chopin, right? It just sounds like Chopin. It breathes like Chopin. And finally, Liszt wrote this in a very difficult period of European history, because 1 year before, 1848, was a year of revolutions being fought, street fighting. It was one of the bloodiest years in European history. Think of 1968 in this country. That's what one of my teachers told me. Think of 1968 in this country, and not too different. And maybe there's some disillusionment, some sadness from that in this piece as well. I mean, I don't think musicians live in a bubble away from current events. I'm not talking about current events now, but I mean, just in general, I don't think it's possible. So this piece, again, this is the Consolation number 3. The word consolation, the consolation, he takes it from poems by Lamartine, Alphonse de Lamartine. Liszt liked to do that because he invented the tone poem, which is a new kind of form of music that's based on either an image or a narrative. For example, instead of writing just sonata in B, Liszt wrote a sonata in B minor, but he also wrote a Dante sonata. You wouldn't do that much before Liszt, a piece, and he said that the piece is depicts the divine comedy of Dante. So this is how Liszt thought musically, I think, was he used other extra musical, non-musical things as inspirations for what he wrote. So here's the Consolation, number 3. So you see, Liszt was not just fast fingers and show. That piece has so much depth and subtlety and everything. It's a beautiful piece. So now I'm going to play another very subtle, introverted piece by Robert Schumann from around the same time, mid-19th century. And this is Abendlied, Evening Song, from his set Music for Children, Young and Old. The original piece is for four hands, and this is a solo piano arrangement by Saint-Saëns, the French composer Camille Saint-Saëns. And you know, the French, by the way, have traditionally loved Schumann very much and taken a lot of inspiration from him, like people like Fauré and Saint-Saëns, and even Debussy. This idea of creating a mood the way Schumann does, I think it's very, very Schumann-esque, a lot of French music. So this piece is one of his later compositions, and I've talked to you a lot about Schumann over the past. I've been learning a bunch of things like the Paganini studies and other things by Schumann, that one of the big, you know, parts of his life was that he had bipolar disorder, and the understanding of that condition, the treatment for that condition was they didn't really have it back then. And he was influenced by this, obviously, in his life. His life was very difficult. And I think in this piece you hear the Eusebius character. What on earth is that? So Schumann was also a writer, and he created these literary characters, some of whom were based on, like, he had Paganini, Chopin, you know, those were literary characters in his music journal of music criticism. He was writing music criticism, but in a very flowery, literary fashion, which is amazing. But the main characters are two parts of himself, he said, Florestan and Eusebius. Florestan was the over-the-top extrovert, maybe the manic side, like something like this. That's this wild music. That's from the piano concerto. Then there's the Eusebius character, which is the opposite, the sad, maybe it's like a depressed character. And you have things like some of the most heartbreaking pieces, Traumerei from Kindersehnen, which I wish I would play that. But that, by the way, Traumerei means dreaming. And that's what so much of Schumann's music is. It's like you can't play it, you have to dream it. And this piece, you know, that's from Kindersehnen, Scenes from Childhood. This piece is also from a set about childhood, music for children, young and old. So in some way, this is, I guess it's like before psychology exists, but it's interesting that he was really fascinated and almost obsessed with the going back to childhood, the naive, you know, purity of being a child. Well, this is also something in the air. Rousseau wrote Émile about childhood innocence and all that, so I guess that was something in the air at that time. But I think he was, from what I understand, Schumann was a very involved father. They had many kids with his wife Clara, who was a great musician herself, and by the way, she was far more well-known than he was during their lifetimes, and she would be away performing. So what was he doing? He was being a stay-at-home dad and spending a lot of time with his kids. And in somewhere I read, they said that people say he relived his own childhood. And unfortunately, at the time he wrote this, his mental health was declining. He was hearing voices. And I don't have to tell you all the details, but he ended up, he tried to commit suicide, it didn't work. He lived then in an asylum, where I think he even didn't speak. He wrote some music, but hardly, and there were no visitors. And finally, at the very end, his wife, Clara, came to see him 2 years after he had started living there. And she snuck in, and then the next morning he was gone at 46. 46, it's just terrible. And the reason I say all that is because you might expect the music he wrote at that period to be tortured and to be wild and to be, you know, it's the opposite. It's just opaque and serene and just complete peace. Too much, even. It's eerie. Sometimes you need a little irritation and conflict in life to be healthy, I think. This is unhealthily calm. So, here it is.
I mean, you go too far, it's called anxiety. But I mean, everyone needs a little, just a little anxiety, right? So.
So I'm going to play something much noisier now. But the funny thing about that, I'll just tell you an observation I made. When I play this piece, you know, I play it at a lot of places, and every time I play that piece, not here, but every time I play this piece, something loud happens. A vacuum cleaner goes off, a loud cell phone goes off, something falls and breaks. But it's almost as if the piece is so calm that it invites that kind of chaos. But it's, I think there's a lot of silence in that piece. I mean, it doesn't actually stop, but there's just, it's like suspended in time. I don't know what it is. You know what that reminds me of? I was just thinking as I played it. It makes maybe no sense, but I have these weird associations. Emily Dickinson, you know, her poems. But of course, they lived at the same time. And there's something, and she had something, maybe she had some mental illness or something, you know, she didn't leave home for, you know, days. It's just something, the smell of it, you know what I mean? There's like something there. So, but anyway, now I'm going to play this piece that I've played a couple times at Friends Homes West and never here. So if you haven't been over there, well, this will be the first time you hear it. This is a piece that I have to give some, you know, disclaimer to. You'll know when you hear it. This is the Lutoslawski Paganini Variations from 1941, so much further ahead in history. This is the piece I say you might not like it, and you also might not like me after I play it. But I think if I explain it, it should make more sense. 20th century music and painting and literature, you know, the arts in the 20th century can be very caustic and abstract, and you're gonna, like the Messiaen a little bit. Messiaen is somewhat like that, but he had a little more, you know, sweetener in there than, say, Boulez or maybe even Ludoslavsky. Ludoslavsky, you're gonna hear a lot of, you know, you're gonna hear those things. Just disclaimer. And just like if you look at a Picasso painting or a Mondrian or something, you're gonna see these, you know, kind of crazy things. Why? Because the 20th century was such a, it was a crazy, yeah, it was a traumatic century, 2 world wars. And I hope ours is gonna be better. So far, I don't know, but, you know, how could you write something like even that Schumann piece during the Second World War? You know, Bruno, what was his name? Now the name, it was like there, and it's like, he was a philosopher at the time, friends with Adorno, Theodor Adorno, I don't know his name. He said that to write romantic music after the horrors of the Second World War, the horrors of Auschwitz, he said, would be unthinkable. So what does he mean? Like, can you, in the context of the Second World War, could you write something like that? Liszt? Consolation? Like, it doesn't fit, you know? And so what Ludoslavsky does, I think, is he gives you the sense of being there. He depicts the time and place, the context. You know, context is everything. Here's one of the variations. It sounds like a sick and twisted march. It's like he's mocking the Nazis almost. That's the 20th century. It's different. It's more metallic. I even imagine like rubble there. There's this part right here. It's like, but this is all, as crazy as that can be, it's all tied to the Paganini 24th Caprice. Go figure. But how he treats it is, you know, very unusual. And it's brilliant, because even if this is not your cup of tea, I just ask you to think about this, that if you find it excruciating, well, yes, that's the point. Sometimes beauty is not pretty. You know, what do they say? Beauty and truth, but I think that maybe there's an overlap between the two. And this is like the truth. He's telling you the truth through the music. And the story of Ludoslavsky, or Ludoslavsky, I found out in Polish. I don't speak Polish. That's another thing I should work on, you know, is, so, no, really, I mean, I tell people I can speak several languages really badly, and then English sort of not correctly, but mostly. So, yeah. But this is, you know, Ludoslavsky was born in 1915, and he was an officer in the Polish army. And at the start of the Second World War, the Polish army collapsed. And I think his brother was killed at the front. And when he realized that this was going on, he just walked back to Warsaw. And he would play in bars to make enough money to eat. And he did 2 piano concerts with his friend, fellow composer, Andrzej Panufnik, who's a great composer too, went on to live in the UK later. And by the way, both Panufnik and Ludoslavsky later, for some reason, had very heavy British accents. If you look up there, I was amazed. But anyway, in the daytime, they played background music. They played popular arrangements of things. In the evenings, they would, in the middle of the night, rather, like 2 a.m., they'd do these secret concerts where they played their own music, like this piece. And one of these was interrupted by a group of SS officers who pulled out their guns and said, "We will shoot you now because this is illegal music." You know, the Nazis and the Soviets didn't tolerate anything like that. You know, you have to be a conformist, right, in a totalitarian regime. And my understanding is that they almost were killed, but the bartender came out and saved them. He said, "These gentlemen have had too much to drink. They're my business associates. They're tipsy. That's why their music sounds so bad. Let them please just leave them alone. That's what life was like at that time. So that's why this music is the way it is. And when Warsaw fell, Lutoslawski had to escape, and he managed to carry one thing with him, one piece of music that he'd written up until that point, this piece. I think everything else he'd owned or even written, if I'm not mistaken, everything was lost in the war. But he took this. So this is a 2-piano piece. Later in this 1978, he redid it into a piano and orchestra piece. And then I had the really crazy idea of trying to put it into 1 piano. I don't know if it works, but I will do what I can. So again, even if it's not your cup of tea, you can't deny that every note has personality and character in this. So here it is. Thank you. I'm less and less scared to play it for people because the piece has so much there. And I've gotten many interesting comments from people. Some don't like it, of course. Some said, "Oh, that sounds like my cat's falling on the piano," pots and pans or something. But I heard other people say things like one lady told me it reminded her of doom scrolling on TikTok. And some videos are funny, some are downright scary, and it's this whole smorgasbord of different moods and images. And other people tell me that it's dystopian, which I think so. One lady I met said she was in Warsaw recently, and this reminded her of Warsaw. Someone else told me that it reminded them of current events today. So if you have something that's come to your mind, please tell me after, because I love hearing these things. Like I'll never forget when someone told me that the Beethoven 32 Variations in C minor was popcorn for them. It tasted like it. They could see it, they could smell it and hear it. And I thought that's amazing, because I guess, yeah, but why not? So now I'm going to play part of something that is absolutely brand new for me. And so it's undercooked, but I feel like I need to play stuff that's new for you. I'm learning Rachmaninoff's Paganini Rhapsody. But that's another piece for piano plus orchestra, and as you can see, I didn't bring my private orchestra. So it's going at a snail's pace to learn this, because I'm trying to play the orchestra part too, as much as I can. I only have 10 fingers, you can't. There's a story, I guess, about Liszt, or young Liszt. They said, "I bet you can't do a chord with these 3 notes," and he just used his nose to play it. So I guess maybe if I used my nose, I could play, but nobody knows, right? I'm sorry, that's a bad pun. Bad pun. It's a dad joke, You know what they say, that a joke becomes a dad joke when the meaning becomes apparent, you guys. Okay. The moment you have kids, like I have 2 small kids, you start wearing socks and sandals and telling bad puns. Sorry, but so this is variations 1 through when I can't go anymore. That's what it's going to be. And what this is based on the same 24th Caprice, but it's Rachmaninoff. And Rachmaninoff, this is 1935, only 6 years before that Lutoslawski. And he wrote it at his summer home in Switzerland. Not bad, right? But I'll explain. He left the Soviet Union in 1917 when the revolution happened, never returned, and was so nostalgic, because Russian nostalgia is pervasive. It's a heavy thing. My mother has it. My mother's from Russia. And I just saw her yesterday, and it was all Russian food. Eat your herring. No, it was, you have to eat your herring, you know? And this is my mom, and she loves North Carolina, loves America. She doesn't want to go back, but everything is Russian paintings. And apparently Rachmaninoff, I read one of his homes was a replica of his home in Russia. That's how deep his nostalgia was. So, but he did have this, fancy schmancy summer home in Switzerland because he ended up becoming quite wealthy as a concert pianist in this country and would spend the summers in Switzerland. Actually, part of the reason was because he wanted to be close to Russia, just the old country, Europe. He was so, but anyway, this piece is unique for Rachmaninoff because he pretty much didn't write much in the 1920s when he was living here. But it was at that time he also slowly came to love jazz. He went to hear Art Tatum play, and he didn't want to, but someone forced him to go and hear him, and apparently he turned over. Rachmaninoff was a 6.5 foot tall, shaved head. He looked like a escaped convict, That's what Stravinsky said, I think. And, he turns to his friend and he says very quietly, "If this gentleman plays classical, we are all in trouble." Yeah. But what I feel in this music is that even though Rachmaninoff did not adapt a 20th century dissonant style like Lutoslawski, it sounds different from his early music. How could it not? It sounds like America and the West, and it sounds like the 20th century. I can see newsreels. I can imagine it's 20th century music from a 19th century Russian aristocrat. That's what it is to me. And then, I'm going to play it, and as much as I can, really, because it's, to play it as, so here it is, some of it. Sorry for the incomplete picture. that's just part of it. So please tell me, it's 4:31. Can I go 5 more minutes? Is that okay? I mean, there's not another group waiting. Okay, so that's, if you need to go, it's fine. I won't, I understand. So I won't be too long because I have to go to Winston-Salem after this. But so I want to play the famous 18th variation of this piece because what happens is interesting. Like, don't you see what I mean? That's not Rachmaninoff in Russia. There's something. It's different. But in the 18th variation, he goes back to his old style, I think. It's like he's remembering, and this is maybe the most heavily nostalgic of them. I mean, you still hear the Russian bells in the last one. It's like, but it's more of like a memory of them than the. That's it. But the 18th variation is where he takes the. I played this before. I learned it first, so I've played it for a while. He takes the famous. Something got on my pants. What is that? I'll handle it later. It's like some kind of one of those thorns from a rose bush, and I haven't been in any rose bushes. That is bizarre. Well, anyway, I don't know why I'm noticing that. So, right, he flips it upside down, so that, which everyone knows, but that's what that is. It's Paganini upside down. And, it's funny, when he wrote this variation, he wryly commented, he said, well, the publishers will like this one. So, he was right. The movies, Somewhere in Time that's a movie that uses this. Thank you. I'll do 2 more short things. One more very quick classical piece because it's very fast, and then a very fast gospel to close. This is something that's brand new for me, but I want to play it. The Flight of the Bumblebee by Rimsky-Korsakov, another Russian piece. And this is arranged by Rachmaninoff, which also makes it even worse to play. I mean, not to hear, but to play, you know. And there's, by the way, there's a Chifra version, Hungarian piano. I'm learning that too, and that is insane. That if this first one sounds like a bumblebee, the Chifra sounds like a swarm of hornets. But that's for next time. So this is a part of an opera by Rimsky-Korsakov, The Tale of the Tsar Sultan. And he wrote it in 1900. I've been listening to it in the car. I don't know enough about opera, especially Rimsky-Korsakov. I need to listen more. And it's a scene in which this prince somehow turns into a bumblebee so he can go see the Tsar, his father. Don't ask me, it's a Russian fairy tale, it's very weird, but that's just what they do. And this piece is so evocative of one of those darn flying things, and I thought I'd learn it now because, you know, in honor of what's going on in nature right now. I mean, in North Carolina, there's just these dumb flying things. Well, we need them for the flowers and the trees, but if they're in your face, it's not very pleasant. So, you know, you can... really sounds like a bee. So here is the piece.
And since it's new for me, sometimes the bee crashes into walls, so it's not quite there yet, but.
Close. Just one gospel today. I'm sorry I overstayed my welcome. I tend to do that. I talk a lot. I always joke about this, that, my mother's a Russian immigrant, my dad's an immigrant from Southern Virginia, and the two, the thing that is, I've noticed the cultures are not that different, and it boils down to people who tell very, very, very long stories that never end. There's a story, went to a reunion of some sort in Virginia when I was little, with my mom and dad, and I went, and I didn't remember this, I was very little, but I came up to my mom afterwards and I said, Dad is not crazy. Everybody talks forever here. And, but the same, you look at William Faulkner and then you look at Tolstoy, and yeah, they both are they got a lot to say. So maybe I inherited some of that from my parents, so I'm sorry. But this is a gospel song is one of those that they don't really do in churches anymore. And it's called Turn Your Radio On by Albert E. Brumley. Maybe you know it. It's he wrote I'll Fly Away too. So this is a really old-timey, upbeat. Sorry there wasn't more gospel today, but hey, at West I played the half and half, so I guess that hopefully makes up for it. Here it is. Wait, I forget, where do I even start? Yeah.
weekend. Just grab this.